guys, I hope you're all doing well and staying healthy. I'm going to just jump right into it. Our learning target today is 5.2.1, which is identifying characteristics of a quadratics graph. So last unit we started talking about quadratics. Remember that quadratic means degree of 2, or an exponent of 2. However, we're going to actually look at the graph of what a quadratic looks like. And this specific graph is called a parabola. So I have an example of a parabola here. The main idea is that a parabola is either shaped like a U or an N, or a smile or a frown. And it can be, stretched out, it can be wide, it can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. However, there are a bunch of characteristics about these graphs other than a U or an N. So let's just start with directionality. Directionality is basically, is my graph facing up or facing down? So if we look at our example here, the easy way to determine the directionality of a graph is to look at the arrows. So if we look at our arrows on this graph, you can see that those arrows are facing up. That means our directionality is positive. If your arrows were facing down, that means your directionality would be negative. Okay, cool, directionality done. Moving on, our second characteristic we're going to look at is maximum and minimum. So to determine the maximum or minimum of a parabola, you're basically going to look at your graph and kind of look for the middle of that function here. And we're going to look at that middle point. So on this example, we have a middle point about there. Hopefully you guys can all see that. Okay. And to determine if this is a maximum or a minimum, you're going to ask yourself, is that point at the top or the bottom of my graph? So in this example, we have our point, it's kind of at like the bottom of a valley. I like to say the top of a hill or the bottom of a valley. Since this one is at the bottom, we're going to say this is a minimum. Okay, so this graph has a minimum. Specifically, this middle point is what we call the vertex. Okay, and the vertex of a graph is just exactly that. It's the middle point. However, to name the vertex, you have to actually give me the ordered pair of that point. So if we look at my example here, remember that your vertex has to come as an ordered pair, x comma y, right? So we're going to look at our x value. On our x-axis, it looks like it's at -1. Hopefully you guys can all see that. So our x value would be -1. And then our y value is also negative. We're going to see how far down we went. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it looks like. So our vertex would be at the point -1, -6. Okay, so our vertex is a minimum and it has a specific location. Our third characteristic of this graph is our axis of symmetry. And the vertex and the axis of symmetry kind of go hand in hand. So the vertex is that middle point. The axis of symmetry is like if you were to cut the parabola exactly in half through the vertex, it would form a mirror image. So it would look the same on both sides. So on our example here, if I kind of draw my middle line through this, and I apologize, this might not be the straightest. Here we go. You can kind of see that if I were to fold that parabola over that line, it would be exactly the same on either side. That's what we call our axis of symmetry. And to name that, we always use the form x equals. Okay, and then you just have to tell me the x value. Because remember, x equals a number is an undefined line, so it's a straight up and down line. That's how we have to name it. So we look at our x value, and guess what? You've already named it in your vertex. So we can now say that our axis of symmetry is at x equals -1. Woohoo! 3 characteristics down. Our fourth characteristic is the X-Intercept. And we've talked since almost the beginning of the year about what an X-Intercept is. Basically, it's where the line crosses the x-axis. Remember that this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. So in this case, we're actually going to cross our X-Intercept twice. If we look here, I cross my x-axis here and my x-axis here. So 2 different spots that I'm crossing the x-axis. And that's okay. you can actually have 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. So now we have to name those. Our x values for each of these, and again we're going to use ordered pairs, so x comma y. So for this x-intercept, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5. And that's going to go in the x's place. And our y place, you guessed it, is going to be 0. For our second x-intercept, we're going to count again. So we are at 1, 2, 3 this time, positive 3. And again, our y's place is going to be 0. So far we have minimum, vertex, axis of symmetry, and our x-intercepts. There is one more characteristic. And before I go on to that, you should also know that x-intercepts can be called zeros, roots, or solutions. All three of those terms are interchangeable with the word x-intercept. Y-intercept, however, only has one name, and it's just Y-intercept. And it's exactly where the graph crosses the y-axis this time. So if we look at our example, on our y-axis, our graph crosses here. Hopefully everybody can see that. So now we again need to name this with an ordered pair, an xy. However, this time our x's place is going to be 0 because you have to give me a y value. And our y value is going to be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. So now we've named all of our characteristics of our graph. I'm going to go through one more example just to make sure you guys really understand it. Hopefully this helps. Here we go. So one more example. This time you'll notice it's a little bit different. We've kind of moved it around and it's facing a different direction. So right off the bat, hopefully you guys know that we can determine its directionality. It's facing a different way this time. So our directionality for this graph, remember we look at those arrows. Since our arrows are pointing down, our directionality is going to be negative. Remember that if it was facing up, if those arrows were pointing upward, then it would be positive. The easy way to remember that is that if you are positive, you're smiling. If you're negative, you're frowning. Okay, so now we have negative directionality. Remember our second characteristic that we looked at was the maximum or minimum. So we look for that middle point, kind of if we were to look in the middle here, look at that middle point. And this time, that point is at the top of our hill, or at the top of our graph, so we say that this is a maximum. All right, moving on, our next characteristic is the vertex. So we've actually already pointed out the vertex, now you just need to give me the actual numbers for that spot. So if we put our ordered pair here, remember our x comma y, you need to give me an x's place and a y's place. So here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, positive 6 for our x value. And we actually haven't moved anywhere on our y-axis, so our y value is going to be 0. So far we have directionality, maximum or minimum, and the vertex. Our axis of symmetry is the next one that we should identify. So draw that line through the middle. And remember, we always label it with x equals. And you just give me the x value. So our x value here was 6. So our axis of symmetry is x equals 6. All right, 2 more characteristics. We got both x-intercepts. So this is where it gets a little funky, because now we're looking for where it crosses the x-axis. And if you notice, it's actually in this one point. So this one point is not only our maximum and our vertex, it's also our X-intercept in this case. So this point is three very important things. So I'm just going to relabel this not only our maximum, but also our X-intercept. Okay. All right, last but not least, we have our Y-intercept. So if we look, where is it crossing the y-axis? Kind of trace your finger along that y-axis is the easy way to do that. And it looks like it crosses about there. So now we just have to give that a name. So we write our ordered pair. Remember, this is going to go in the y's place. We're going to put a 0 in the x's place. And our y value, if we count, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. All right, you guys. I hope that cleared up any confusion that you might have with the Learning Target 5.2.1. There is a task for you to do based on all of these characteristics. So if you're struggling, please feel free to reach out to me. Remember, I do have office hours. If you're looking to contact me immediately, Google Hangouts is the way to go. If it's just kind of a question that I can answer throughout the week, you can email me. All right. Good luck, everybody.